Welcome back to another Backseat Gaming. I wanted to talk about in this video collectibles in games, which, if you're obsessive like I am, maybe there's not such a thing as a bad collectible. But in any case, I wanted to talk about the ones that I like, think why I like them, and maybe why we get so obsessive over collectibles to begin with. I don't know if it's kind of like maybe you're like me, where like say you're playing Spyro the Dragon, and the little counter in a level says that you're at 199 gemstones out of 200 collected, and you just really, really, really need that number to hit 200, or you will like lose your marbles. It could even just be because they represent like our inner need to collect or whatever. Like me, for example, I'm really into trading cards, and especially like the One Piece TCG. And like I recently saw like a One Piece card that sold for like 6 figures, which is insanity to me. But hey, if someone was willing to pay for it, even about stuff I don't care about, like there's like the stamp, like one of the world's most rare stamps that was made here in the US is just because of an error. Like you can get like 7 figures for a stamp just because the little like airplane like graphic on it was printed upside down. Like, and that was enough for someone to pay like millions of dollars. But sometimes maybe it's not so serious, and like collectibles in games represent just like fun little things, fun necessary things for like the story. I don't know, but I just kind of wanted to dig into them because I'm a big fan. So why don't we do this? I'll categorize all the collectibles into their own category because, I mean, people, we love to categorize things. And I think for this first section, I wanted to talk about just gemstones and jewels. Classic shiny trinket. It's hard to go wrong with a good gemstone or a good piece of shiny something. But why not string out of the gate pretty strongly with the Croc series? So if you know, I think in an older video I might have said, Croc was honestly one of my first 3D experiences in gaming. And there's something about that series that really sticks in my head, specifically with these gemstones in that game. You collect like these little crystals, which is like, even though they're white, which you would think white diamonds are rare and stuff, but they're like the currency of the game. So the pipeline, for whatever reason, is white crystals. They're kind of like the Mario coins. You collect crystals and then you get to deposit them onto a credit card that only works as like a gift card for this guy's shop called Swap Meet Pete, if you're following along to any of that. Hopefully it made sense. But there's this real satisfying, like fun, like crunch, little tingle noise when you collect the crystal that I really like. It's just ingrained in my head from childhood. And I think what's fun is that every level, specifically in Croc 2, there's like worlds. So every time you progress into a new world, it's a new village for the little furry creatures in the game called Gobos. And so every village will have a set of levels, and in every level you'll get a set of 5, I think, like colored gemstones, which not only are they hidden really nicely, like they're really satisfying to find, but like they're a different color. They got like a different jingle than the normal ones do. And then they also have like this, when you find like all 5 of them, like there's this real satisfying little full, like it plays like a full melody of the jingle, and like they shimmer all over your screen and stuff. And it's a real satisfying experience that, again, I still remember as a kid for sure. And when you collect, so the whole point of collecting those 5 gemstones per level is that it gives you a shot at like, it's like a try it or fail thing. You get to earn a golden Gobbo trophy. So it's like, I guess, this world's version of like a Gobbo, like Academy Award or whatever. But you only get 1 shot to earn it. Otherwise, you have to restart the whole level again. So there's a little bit of stakes. And when you earn, because every level has those gemstones, when you earn the trophy for each of those levels, you get a shot at an extra bonus level. And then that bonus level, I know, bear with me here, will give you a shot at a jigsaw piece, which off the top of my head, I think just gives you access to like an extra boss, I think, but for sure a different ending to the game, which teases a 3rd Croc that never came. So maybe like a great collectible in theory, but hindsight is everything. By the way, if you're having a good time, I would welcome you to like the video and subscribe to the channel, or even just leaving a comment that says like, what's up? I think it helps YouTube realize that, hey, this guy, like people are kind of digging what he's doing. So let me recommend him to more people, but it's always appreciated if you do. But otherwise, just, enjoy the rest of this video. Speaking of gemstones, I know I mentioned Spyro the Dragon earlier, which is another game pretty early on in my 3D experience that is a great example of it. Because I mean, that's the jam, right? Is the gemstones in Spyro. And one thing I like about Spyro, how they do it is not only do they give you, like I said, like this way to track them. So you get like a journal, a log that tells you just straight out like, hey, like have found this many gemstone of this type of color. So like it gives you motivation to like, if you're a numbers guy like me, like I need that counter to be complete. It separates them by color. So sometimes, for example, like the red or green ones like are really common. So that just tells you that maybe you haven't quite explored just like the general areas and stuff like that. But sometimes the ones that you're missing are purple and gold, which that just means because they're worth a little bit more than the red and green ones, you're probably missing like a little secret nook or cranny or something. Or there's a special chest like that contains those. So you might have even like, it could give you something to look out for, you know, like you may not find them out in the open. They're probably in those little chests. Along with the log and stuff, you also get access to I don't know what the logic is with this, but you get a little buddy called Sparks who represents your health in this game. And the way you get your health back up is that he eats butterflies or whatever. I don't know. But in any case, he represents your health. So you can tell how much health you have depending on what color your dragonfly buddy is. But a handy thing he does is that he also not only points towards potential gemstones when you're near one, but if you get close enough, you don't actually have to run into the actual gemstone. Like he'll go ahead and scoop it up for you, which is like extra motivation even to stay at a high health. Because if you lose Sparks, then it's harder to find and gather the gemstones as you come across them. In Spyro though, they do have a little bit of an extra purpose. I mean, yeah, in Croc you do get like bonus things and stuff. It's like satisfying to collect them, but you genuinely need them to progress in Spyro for certain sections, especially in the later games. And there's this character in the series that we all love to hate called Moneybags. And his whole deal is that he gates off, like whenever you enter a new world in Spyro, he'll just straight out gate it off from you. So you're like not able to progress until you collect a certain amount of gemstones. And it kind of comes full circle because I think in the third game, if I remember right, you finally get to get your money back from Moneybags because the developers at the end of the game will let you just wail on him. So you run around chasing him and you see like money spilling out on him as you like chase him around and like hit him. And then you get to use like your gemstones that you were using throughout the whole game to pay for things. Like you get to get them back and you get to use them to actually buy like more satisfying unlockables. And it's like, it was this really like satisfying full circle moment I remember as a kid. We're talking gemstones, like I really wanted to bring up obviously like the Pokemon series too, because most of the items in Pokemon tend to be more like it's stuff for your mon, you know, it's like stuff to heal them or like battle items that like when you equip it to your Pokemon, it'll affect what happens or what they can do in the battle. But some of the stuff is just straight out so you can sell it. So for example, there's things like golden nuggets and pearls and I think it's like comet shards, just straight out like shards from a meteorite that they don't have any point really except to be sold to a shop. So you can buy more stuff for your Pokemon. I think even at some point they introduced like big nuggets in the game. So you can straight out like sell it for even more money, sell it for 5 bills instead of the usual 4. Although to be fair, I think the big nugget does have a use because there's like a Pokemon move where like the Pokemon throws whatever it's holding, and the heavier the thing, the more damage it causes. So technically, I guess it does have some use beyond being a collectible. But I mean, you just want the nugget, man. I know you do. And then to top it off, I want to talk real quick too about Luigi's Mansion because there's gemstones, treasure, dollar bills, gold bars, the works in that game too. But there's literally no point to it unless you want like a high score, which I guess does affect the ending, I guess, to the game. You get a nicer mansion at the end of the game, the more money you collect. But it really is just like the satisfaction of like, you know, like shiny things spill out from everywhere. So just collect as much of it as you can, which goes to show you, I think, how much people just like shiny trinkets and things like that, I guess. Which is the reason why there's a secret treasure room in Luigi's Mansion that is just, that's the whole point of the room. There's nothing to progress the story or whatever. But you just get a shit ton of cash and diamonds and stuff like that in that room. And to discover it, it feels like it's still worth it, even though it's like a really obscure method to find out. This next section, I think I wanted to refer to as collectibles that have like some kind of currency or in-game use, if that makes sense. I think this first example might explain it. It's kind of like the rings in Sonic. So the rings, I mean, you know the deal, right? Like as long as you're holding on to one, no matter how many times you get hit by an enemy, if you collect one ring at least or more, Sonic will continue to Sonic. But they are kind of like also a currency in a sense, because I mean, yeah, you could go the score route. The more rings at the end of the level you have, the better the score. But also too, especially in the later games, that's how you enter the bonus levels. You end with enough rings, you know, you can hop to a bonus level. You end up at a checkpoint with enough rings, and that lets you hop to a bonus level depending on how many you have. Which leads to the next collectible in that game is gemstones. Of course, also Sonic has gemstones, and it's the famous Chaos Emeralds. Which the Chaos Emeralds are pretty funny because they went from being like, we don't care about them, just straight out, like, you know, versus Sonic game is like, how many are there? 7, 9, 12? Some of them are brown, whatever color. We don't care, you know? And then in the later games are like this like plot, like the plot revolves around them usually now. So it's like very interesting growing up, seeing them like be used that way to like how they are now. But just straight out, they're like the big collectible in Sonic games is the Chaos Emerald, because they'll do usually one of two things in Sonic games. You'll either get access to a form that's really fun in the main levels, or you'll get access to like the true final part of the game. I'll give you a good example of both. Here's some of my favorite Sonic moments. So in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, you know, you collect your 7 Chaos Emeralds that lets you become Super Sonic in the main stages, you know, wearing its Dragon Ball influence on its sleeve. And if you want to even go further than that, you can collect another 7 emeralds called Super Emeralds after that, which gives you access to a hyper form, which has never come back for some reason to this day, which is a shame because, you know, Fruity Pebbles Super Sonic, who wouldn't want that? It's enhanced. You can kind of break the game with how fast you can go as Hypersonic once you get the Super Emeralds. But in any case, they only ever do the Chaos ones now. And you get to use it in the main levels as like a reward. Like you went out of your way to do like this side thing. So now we're going to give you this power up that you can activate in the main levels to make the levels super fun and easy because you earned it. And in Sonic 3, it actually even gives you an alternate last level. Like if you have all 7 Chaos Emeralds when you beat the final boss, you get to access the Doomsday Zone, which is like the true final boss of this epic showdown where Sonic's flying around through space trying to beat this big robot, and you're trying to get like the big Master Emerald back. And it was such an iconic thing as a kid to see. And they really did a nice callback to it in the Advance series. When in Sonic Advance, the second one, I think, you don't get access to Super Sonic anymore in the main levels, which is a bummer in my opinion. But there is still that sense of like that extra level at the very end, where in Sonic Advance 2, for whatever reason, they make the Chaos Emeralds like really annoying to get in that game. Like it's just like blood, sweat, and tears. I think that's the only one I ever did it for that reason. But when you do that, you get access to this like last level. And then you get this cutscene like where one of your friends' mom gets taken by a big robot, and the robot flies into space. Your friend starts crying, and then Sonic looks down and looks at her crying, like this moment of like, oh damn, okay, like it's time to get real, you know? And it's like the Chaos Emeralds fly around him and stuff, and he just like, it has like this whole cutscene where like, it's like this nice detailed artwork of his super form comes out, and he just, you know, gives like the classic, like, I got this thumbs up, and flies off into space like a superhero. And similar to Sonic 3, you get a cool showdown in space, and it's a good time. I don't know if it's worth the pain of doing the Chaos Emeralds, like collecting those in that game, but it's a great reward for sure. There's no like inherent benefit to it aside from seeing like the last cool part of the game. But not every currency has to be so serious, you know? I think a funner example of that would be if you play the Lego Star Wars games, they have these things called studs, which is like just like the most basic Lego piece you can think of. It would be like if you could collect, I guess, like atoms in the, well, I mean, you do collect atoms, I guess, in real life, but I hope, you know what I'm saying. But it's the most fundamental like Lego piece, I guess, and it spills out of everything. It's like you break scenery, you get studs. You kill enemies, you get studs. You explore the level, you get studs. So you get these little satisfying sounds, and you pick them up, and there's so many of them, and they come in different colors, and it's just fun to like hungry hippo and scoop them all up. But it's not just score, you know, like there actually is a use for them. That's how you get different characters and just like cheat codes and like abilities and stuff like that in the Lego Star Wars games, which lets you do fun stuff. Like you get to use, I don't know, like Darth Maul in episode 4. And then you're like, hey, he's not supposed to be there. And it's like, yes, he is. I unlocked him with all my studs. Fun fact, I had a friend where they used a Darth Maul mask to represent the devil in his Christian church play. So I always think of Darth Maul as the devil for some reason, for that reason. And I think a pretty stellar example of this is in Mario Odyssey. So in Mario Odyssey, they have, I mean, you know Mario, right? Mario Classic, like you collect the coins for your score. I guess, you know, you collect 100, you get a 1-up. They're not complicated, but they do an interesting take in Mario Odyssey because, I mean, you know, the 3D games, they have the main collectible, right? Like the Power Star, the Power Suns. Yeah, well, and then Mario Odyssey has like the moons. That's what you collect is like the main thing that progress the game. But the purple coins, they're basically like this type of actual currency. Whenever you visit a world, each world has its own unique purple coin with its like specific shape or engraving or whatever. And you can use it in the shops in each world to just buy cosmetic stuff. You get little trinkets for your ship. And then my favorite thing is you get cool outfits for Mario. So you can just do your adventure as like an astronaut or something if you really want to, or naked if you really want to. And they're also tied into like the main collectible. Like they're usually tied into like exploring the world or collecting more of the power moons. And so they have their own like literal currency purpose to it, but you can use it to progress the game too in certain parts. But otherwise, they're just optional. If you go out of your way to go find them, you get access to more cool things. And I think that's fun. Yum. Now we're getting into it. Now is food. I mean, kind of a staple. You know, you would assume food would be some type of collectible in a game, but kind of true to like how it is in games. They usually tend to be more temporary collectibles or like to represent like health or something like that. So, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is honestly just straight out like Donkey Kong Country. I mean, my poor boy. That's the whole part of the game is that they steal his banana hoard. And so, you know, it kind of makes sense that they would make it like the Mario coin of Donkey Kong. You collect bananas because you're getting them back and they just do things like add to your score, or get lives and things like that. But they have fun collectibles too. Like, for example, this is the first game I saw where like just spelling out the name, like you can collect letters that spell out Kong, and that's a collectible for like extra lives, I think, if I remember right. Which, fun fact, I did not know you can also get Kong letters on Etsy. So go Etsy sellers, which by the way, did you know that you can also get replicas of Chaos Emeralds and rings on Etsy? This actually might be the one I take the plunge for. I kind of want these. But most of the time, the food is just so quick in video games. Like, I had this like plug and play thing for retro consoles, like, you know, where it's just like a controller and like you just plug in video games, cables, VCA cables or whatever into the TV. Even though I grew up with like a Nintendo and stuff like that, it was great to have those because it gave me access to a bunch of those that I didn't have, like a bunch of Atari games and stuff like that too. But there was games like Ice Climbers where you collect little veggies and stuff like that just for a better score, or just classic Pac-Man, just straight out. The way you get a higher score in Pac-Man and reflects better on you is you collect the fruit and stuff that appears. And so food has always had this association with like just being a very temporary almost, I think, in games. It's the main point of one of the campaigns in Kirby Superstar is literally, I think it's the gourmet race. There you go, that's what it's called. And that's the whole point is who can eat the most food while running through the levels. And there's just something so fun about like a character that inhales as his main ability and just seeing how much you can stuff your face. I think my favorite example of it is it's a health bar in Ape Escape for the PlayStation. It's just straight out, you get a pack of cookies. And so I remember being real, like, I had a lot of fun with this as a kid. I remember having like a pack of cookies and stuff in my pocket, and then I would pretend like it was my health bar. So like eating a cookie will represent me recovering health. And why they made it cookies, I don't know, but it's a pretty fun representation to just pick up cookies and stuff throughout the level. Kind of like Banjo-Kazooie's like honeycombs, I guess. But yeah, just ordinary things as collectibles, I guess, you know. I think the lives in Ape Escape 2 are also like t-shirts. So I don't know what the logic on that one was, but it's fun, I guess. Which, speaking of real life objects, is that's kind of the next category I wanted to talk about. It's just real things from real life as a collectible in games. The first series that comes to my mind is just straight out the Tony Hawk series, because it's, you know, it's a sport game technically, So like literally part of the main campaign, one of the challenges you can do is you just find the secret tape, which if you're ancient like me is a VHS tape, literally. I think in terms of theming or whatever, it's supposed to represent like DIY skate videos and stuff from the 90s. But if you find it, that's one of the goals that you can do to progress a level and unlock more levels. So floating VHS tape, go find it somewhere. But you can also get fun stuff too, you know, like you obviously have a skateboard, which you can get in real life. So some of the unlockables are just straight out like, you know, deck colors and wheel colors, wheel types, graphics for your skateboard. I remember being a big fan of girl skateboards. So that's usually what my playable character would have in the games. There's real thing collecting the game, and it's called Katamari Damacy. So this is gonna make no sense if you've never experienced it, if you're just hearing me explain this by mouth. But in Katamari Damacy, you roll this ball that lets you roll other things into your ball. And as it gets bigger and bigger, you can absorb bigger and bigger things. And you roll it around the entire level. And eventually it gets so big that you can shoot it up into the sky and you make a star. That's Katamari Damacy. But the levels take place and they're just really ordinary settings, you know, like cities. I think in one you start off in a childhood's bedroom. And so eventually, like, you know, like I said, you start off, pick up things like little erasers and like pocket chain and things like that. But soon enough, you can get big enough that you're like absorbing buildings and like entire infrastructures. Like there's kind of Marios that can get really big. So obviously, like you're literally collecting things, but there are certain things that are like special. Like, did you find like this special cow in this level, for example, and make sure that you shot it up into the sky as part of your star? Or like, did you make sure that you didn't collect anything that's red or whatever, like, because that's part of the challenge of this level. So sometimes the collectibles can be real ordinary things, and then that ends up being like the way they spin it. But sometimes things are just literally collectibles, which I think I'll call this next section that. It's just like if you think of a collectible in real life, like the trading cards and stamps I mentioned at the start of the video. This is a great example. This first thing I want to bring up is the Harry Potter video games. So in Harry Potter world, you have these things called wizard trading cards, which is like, when you know the chocolate frog and stuff, the scene from the first movie, when you get a chocolate frog, it comes with a trading card, which has like a portrait of a wizard, moves around and stuff, obviously too, because it's Harry Potter universe. And it includes just like little fun facts about that wizard or witch, on the card itself. And so they translated these into the game. There's no point to collecting them. They're just fun extras you can find somewhere in the level. But what you do get out of, just aside from like the satisfaction of seeing the completed chart and stuff, is that it adds extra little bits of lore about, I guess, like wizards and witches that they didn't have space for in the main story. So stuff they don't bring up in the books or in the movies. Like if you wanted to learn more about just like famous witches and wizards, literally just learn more lore about Harry Potter, you can do so through these wizard cards. So I thought that was like a pretty fun way to motivate people to go out and collect their thing. One game I haven't played too much of is just straight out the Shenmue series. I think I only played it at an aunt's house when I was a little kid, really briefly. But in those games, they're like a really early example of an open world game, and they try to kind of like imitate real life, I guess. So you can go out of your way to take your hard-earned cash in Shenmue and just start straight up playing. I forget if they're crane games or if they're gashapon machines. I think they're gashapons, but you can just collect toys, like just straight out from like the vending machine, basically. Of course, they had to include my boy Sonic, since it's a Sega game and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's literally just a collectible in Shenmue. And you can go out of your way to go collect, I guess, the virtual version of that if you should please. I think this last example though is my favorite. In South Park, we'll see how much YouTube lets you talk about this. In the Stick of Truth, the first game that they did, which is, this is a great example because it shows me how much Matt and Trey really love video games, is how much that was put into this. My favorite collectible in the Stick of Truth is just the Pokemon that you can find throughout the world. So it's a reference to one of the earliest South Park episodes where they just made fun of Pokemon. And so you can collect legendary figures such as like Royd Rat, my boy Royd Rat, and Shu. But yeah, you can find all the Pokemon. I don't know what they do aside from like just being a fun reference to the show and you find them and stuff. I think they might unlock some type of achievement or whatever. But there's another moment in the game that's really satisfying to me because in the game, you can actually visit Canada. For some reason, Canada's in this game. And it's roped off for most of the game. So when you finally get access to it, you're expecting like, I don't know, like some type of like, just real funny take on it. And they actually deliver, but it's kind of in a sweet way where they make Canada like just straight out this like Dragon Quest, like pixel art RPG reference. And when you're in Canada, the collectibles are too like even reflected. So it adds a lot to like the aesthetic of that part of the world. Like you can collect like just retro pixel art gemstones and Canadian maple leaves that look all pixelated. And it's just a really fun, like memorable moment of the game. And really like the whole game is honestly full of just stuff that like there's no point to collecting it. It's literally just like nonsense, you know? I don't know how much, let me see what's in this game. Yeah, I don't know how much of this I can show in a YouTube video, but there's just stuff that's like, sometimes it's just funny, sometimes it's just for shock, and sometimes it's just because it's a fun reference to the game. Like there's no point to collecting it. You can kind of sell it off, I guess, at stores in the game for like a little bit of money, but I was at one point where I just kept an Okama Game Sphere in my inventory just because I really love that episode. And there's no other point to collecting that kind of stuff. It's just nonsense, but it's just all in good fun. And they do a really good job, I think, of understanding why people collect stuff in the Stick of Truth. All right, let's get to paying the bills now. This next section I wanted to call product placement. Dun, dun, dun. No, I think we'll get to this pretty quick. It's just literally like, I mean, just real life products showing up in our games, and they usually show up as collectibles. If you remember our boy Croc from earlier, one of the items that you can buy at the stores with the currency, one of the items that lets you traverse different parts of the levels are like these like little inflatable gummies. And I think in Europe or anywhere that's not America, they're like these little gelatins that let you like jump super high once. And for some reason in the American version, they did a deal with lifesaver gummies. So they just call them gummies in the American version, and they're literally shaped like lifesavers. I don't know if it worked. I really did not like lifesavers as a kid. So marketing, you know, maybe it increased sales. I don't know. But usually how it goes, honestly, with product placement is that the whole game tends to be like the product placement. So there's a game I played, most of them as adults, honestly. Like the really famous one is called Pepsi Man, where it's exactly as it sounds. You're a superhero and your whole thing is that you're delivering Pepsi to those that need Pepsi in need. And it's kind of become a cult classic because the graphics are kind of fun, actually. And like, it's just a fun gameplay loop, even though it's really hard. But that's literally the whole game. It's just you collect Pepsi and you take it to people. Or I think it's for the Genesis or something. I don't know, but I played this again as an adult. There's a whole Ronald McDonald land, like a kind of a missed opportunity a little bit. I think it's called like Treasure something. But anyways, in that game, you're just straight up Ronald McDonald in a platformer, and it's trying to encourage you to go visit McDonald's, obviously. But what I mean by missed opportunity and stuff like that is that there's not really anything representing the restaurant's like food. You would think that they would incorporate like, hey, like let me recover my health with a nice Big Mac, you know? Maybe the lives could be a big nugget, I don't know. But missed opportunity, even though it's kind of actually a pretty fun platformer. And then real quick, I'd have to mention too, stuff like Chex Quest, which is just a reskin of Doom. Like just they've made a bunch of Doom levels with not demon and blood as the main theme, which is like also full of like, they modified the collectibles from Doom to also suit, you know, kid-friendly cereal. You know, I have a really interesting pipeline with that. Is I played a rather well-known Sonic mod, I guess, called Sonic Roboblast 2. That was my first experience with Doom. And then I played Chex Quest as a kid. And then I played the original Doom finally as a teenager. You'd think it'd be the other way around, but they didn't let me play adult games as a kid. I was a nerd. This next section I wanted to call lore. Sometimes collectibles, like kind of like the Harry Potter, I guess, trading cards, are just straight out so that they help you learn more about the world. Right away, one thing that comes to mind is I played Batman Arkham Asylum. You already know where I'm going with this, is that they had these little trophies that the Riddler would leave hidden in the levels. And it just gave you access to fun things. But one of my favorite things is that it gave you access to like these audio recordings of interviews from the patients at Arkham Asylum. So you just get to hear like a bunch of fun voice acting. You get to learn a little bit more about Batman's villains and stuff like that, which is a great idea for a reward. You know, you get to just hear Mark Hamill being the Joker, and that's a pretty fun thing to collect. Here's my favorite take on this though, is one of my favorite games of all time. Honestly, it might even be the sequel, low key, but Psychonauts, the Psychonauts series is a series I really love a whole lot. And there's lots of collectibles in it, but I think one of my favorites is the figments in Psychonauts, because they decorate and pepper the world in like a really nice way. And usually these figments are set up in a way that they'll point you to more collectibles, so you can even use them to find other things like the memory vaults, which if you don't know, in Psychonauts, the levels take place inside people's minds. That's how you enter levels, is entering people's minds. And so when you like are digging around looking for more figments and stuff like that that are scattered throughout the level, you can find things like memory vaults that run around that help you learn more about the backstory of certain characters. That's why a real infamous example is like when you're in Mia's brain and you get to learn her tragic past. They're kind of an annoying collectible though. Like there's so many of them, and they're kind of like, they really blend in with the background sometimes, that I'm really happy that they fixed it in the sequel, where they added a little bit of a drop shadow and I think kind of just brightened them up in general. And so that makes them a little less straining on the eyes to try to find. But great example of a collectible that really like adds to the story, gives you some lore, and just straight out is like real, like thematically appropriate, I guess, for the levels that they take place in. And of course I have to bring out real quick too is just BioShock. I've only ever played the original BioShock, but man, did the world building stand out in that game. And one of the funnest collectibles is just the audio logs, the audio diaries in that game. When you find a tape, it just lets you learn more about, well, what happened here? Why does everything, destroyed and went to crap? And so that's really how you find out like little bits and pieces of the people that just lived here before everything just got destroyed. This next section I wanted to call Flex, the Flex collectible. There's no point to collecting these, really. Like you can still beat the game, get to the true ending or whatever, but the whole point is that you get to show off to your friends, I guess, if you have this. In Mother 3, there's a specific part of the game where you reach this boss called Little Miss Marshmallow, which is just a robot maid of the main villain. And you could honestly just choose to keep advancing. You don't have to fight Little Miss Marshmallow at all. In that room, because you meet her in the main villain's, like, I guess, playroom, he has a yo-yo on display called, like, I guess, like the Legendary Heroes yo-yo or something like that, which is the weapon, the yo-yo, like the infamous weapon of choice from the main protagonist of Mother 2. It's Ness's yo-yo. So if you're a fan of the series, you're like, dang, it's Ness's yo-yo, I kind of want this. But as soon as you take it, Little Miss Marshmallow flips out, because I guess it's like the main villain's like favorite toy or most personal belonging, I guess, or whatever. But you can choose not to take it and progress just fine. She won't flip out if you just keep going. But it's just so tempting, because like you don't need it, first of all. The weapons that I had on me at that point were better than the yo-yo. But also too, like it's like set up to almost like tease you into it. Like in the same room where you can fight Little Miss Marshmallow, there's also a hot spring that can completely heal you. And there's also a save point. So you can just keep retrying the fight over and over again if you should please. But especially if it's like your first playthrough, it'll really catch you off guard and you just can choose to keep going. But if you have it in your inventory, or if you choose to use it as a weapon or whatever, then you can flex on your friends that you have the legendary yo-yo in your inventory. One of my favorite games that does a take on this is the game Celeste, which is a really difficult platformer. And the game has these items called strawberries, which are also completely optional. You can honestly play through your whole first playthrough of Celeste without really collecting any of them, but they tend to not only be like, you get the satisfaction of like reaching them, because they're usually really difficult to reach to begin with, but they tend to lead to other things like more difficult levels, or in some cases the strawberries have wings on them, or they're golden. So there's like actually like requirements almost to like encounter them as a collectible in the level. But really there's no I mean, yeah, you do get, I think, in some cases, a little extra something. But the whole point of them really is just to say, like, what's up? Like, I'm good enough in Celeste that I got the strawberry in this level. And that's kind of the whole point of them. But that's what makes them so satisfying to get. If you've ever played the Spelunky series, that whole game, honestly, is the flex collectible, really. Like, yeah, there's items that help make some, like, levels easier, or you can traverse or get to certain parts of the level if you have a certain item. But a lot of the treasure, especially the one where like you can trigger traps type of treasure, like it's just for your score and just so you could say to your friends, like, look I'm gonna go for this. I don't care what you say, but I'm gonna get this treasure and walk away to the next level. Everything kills you in one hit, by the way. I think for this last section of collectibles, I'm just gonna call it the personalization section. There's something about just like the satisfaction of getting to change something about your playable character that I think will always make it a really satisfying collectible, because you're not interfering with, like, you can't, like, for example, you're not saying like, oh, you can't beat the game because you didn't collect this. Like, no, if you collect this, we'll give you like this nice bonus thing that's usually cosmetic, kind of like the outfits from Mario Odyssey. And some games, like, this is like their whole bread and butter. You know, you have games like Stardew Valley or Terraria, where like, yeah, sometimes the cosmetic thing is just stuff for your room or just stuff to like change your outfit color and stuff like that. And that's inherently what makes them such satisfying feedback loops to experience. Is you go out, you beat the big bad, or you conquer the big challenge or whatever, and then you get to just like spend it on a bunch of stuff to swag out. It doesn't have to even be complicated, like personalization. You know, I played Kirby in the Amazing Mirror as a kid, and one of my favorite items, honestly, to find scattered in the world in the Amazing Mirror was just the little spray can, and it just lets you change the shade of Kirby. That's it. If you wanted to play as orange Kirby, just go find the orange spray can. And just little tweaks like that, for some reason, makes it like really satisfying to collect certain things. Look at that, I just turned orange for a second there. My favorite example I wanted to bring up in this video, though, was the A Hat in Time game. So in that game, it's like a throwback to the 3D platformers that you grew up with, that I grew up with. And so, yeah, there's like obviously collectibles to advance the game. That's the whole point of those types of games. But some of them are just straight out cosmetic. So the ones that tend to not be so optional are like power-ups. Like they work as like badges and stuff that you can put on your hat. You get things like, I guess, super speed or the ability to stop time. But sometimes it's just straight out like you can change your outfit if you collect this, you know, or you can change how your hat looks or like the color of your outfit, and just little tweaks like that. Especially alternate outfits, I'm always 100% for as a collectible, or as a reward for collecting things in these games. And sometimes it really just is for the fans, you know. Like one of my favorite unlockables, if you collect everything in the Tony Hawk games, for example, and sometimes it's just collecting things like gaps, which is, that's a little hard to explain in this video, but it's not quite a physical thing you collect, it's a thing you have to find. But in any case, collecting all the things in the Tony Hawk games, for example, will get you just straight up cheat codes. So you get to have like, you know, really low gravity and things like that. Like the developers will just give you access to ways to break the game as a reward for collecting everything, which is always like very welcome, I think. Sometimes the reward is just straight out, like in the Solid Collection games and stuff that I experienced as a kid, they'll give you access to like more obscure concept art, and they'll give you access to like the comic covers that I remember browsing endlessly as a kid, which I'm sure a bunch of other kids also did too when they would unlock things in these collections as a kid. So sometimes just like fun things from the series could be its own unlockable. And I think too, like the last thing I'll bring up is just straight out like the Smash Brothers series, like the reward unlockable, which eventually you run out of because you collect everything, tends to be the new characters that you can play as. But sometimes you just want to collect yourself some fun trophies. They don't do anything aside from like a fun display in the game with like a little fun excerpt from where the trophy or like whatever game it's from. And then that's it. And you just, you know, you spend like your coins from completing the campaigns or whatever in the game on that. And there's just something that's fun about that. All right. And so, yeah, that's the fun world of collectibles in video games, I suppose. It's always subjective, right? Like I know there's tons of people that just really do not like the idea of collectibles whatsoever. And, you know, the whole completionist type energy that collectibles can give off, it just stresses them out and they prefer not to. And that's fine. I think that's what makes these things such a fun experience. You know, some games, if you really want to go all out, explore every nook and cranny of the world or complete the extra challenge or whatever, the developers choose to give you something you can like sink your teeth into if you really want to, if you really want more from the game. And when they're done right, there's just so many ways, as you can see, to scratch that itch of like, give me the fun trinket, please. Let me have a little bit more of this game, please. Show me more sides of this game that I didn't know before. And while I may come off as, I think, padding to some people, I think to other people it presents like a new way to experience a game they might have played already, or just a little fun side thing that will be a reference to their favorite series, or something that like helps them reflect on their own real life collection habits, maybe even too. But that's my list right there. And hopefully I think the categories divided them up pretty well. I'm sure there's tons of collectibles that didn't even come to mind that I left out of this video. But what about yours? Do you have any favorite games where like it's focused on collecting, or just what are your favorite collectibles and games, or maybe that's not quite the main focus and it just tends to be like a fun side thing? Let me know in the comments. But aside from that, feel free to like the video and subscribe. Hopefully you can make me one of your collectibles and channels that you're subscribed to. And if nothing else, I will catch you guys very soon.